Have you ever had a night on the road that you just can't explain? A moment so strange that it sticks with you, even when you try to forget. Well, tonight, I've got two terrifying trucking stories that will make you think twice before driving through those desolate stretches of highway. Stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss these. My name is Jack, and for nearly 15 years, I've been a truck driver. A lot of people have misconceptions about our lives. They think we just get in the truck, drive, drop the load, and go home. But the truth is, it's nothing like that. You can drive for hours on end through some of the loneliest, most desolate parts of the country. And when you're out there, it's easy for your mind to wander, especially when you're all alone in the dark. But sometimes that silence can be more frightening than any noise. This particular story begins back in 2017. I was making a late-night haul through the Nevada desert, heading to Arizona. Now, the load I was carrying was nothing special. Appliances, I think. But it's funny how something so ordinary can turn into a night you'll never forget. The desert night was pitch black. Not a single light in sight except for the faint glow of my truck's headlights cutting through the darkness. Have you ever driven through the desert at night? If you haven't, let me tell you, it feels like you're the only one left on Earth. The emptiness is unnerving. I mean, the silence out there is so thick, you feel like you can almost hear your own heartbeat. I was starting to feel the weight of the drive settling in. I thought about pulling over, waiting for daylight, but I knew that would just waste time. Money's tight, and when you're a trucker, time is money. So, I kept going. The road was straight ahead, and I convinced myself that there was nothing to worry about. Just keep moving, just keep moving. But that night, I should have listened to my instincts. About an hour before dawn, I saw something in the distance. A pair of headlights coming at me fast. My first instinct was to swerve, but there was no time. I slammed on the brakes and the truck screeched to a halt just inches away from a vehicle parked right in the middle of the road. It was a red car, an old Ford Fusion. It didn't make any sense. Why would anyone leave a car out here, miles away from the nearest town? And why in the middle of the road? I hit the horn a few times, but there was no response. The car didn't budge. My heart started to race, and my mind went into overdrive. Something about this felt wrong. I considered driving around it, but curiosity got the best of me. I decided to back up and pull over to see what was going on. The road was empty for miles, and there was no sign of anyone else. It was like I had driven into another world, one where the rules of reality didn't apply. I grabbed my flashlight, turned off my truck, and stepped out into the cold desert air. The stillness was suffocating. The only sound was the faint clicking of the car's hazard lights. It was like the world was holding its breath. I walked toward the car, the headlights casting long shadows on the cracked asphalt. The red Ford Fusion stood there like an abandoned relic, its passenger door wide open. I circled it slowly, my boots crunching the gravel underfoot. No one inside, nothing at all, except for a faint smell of stale air. I peered into the back seat. Nothing. The front seat was empty, too. I moved to the trunk, feeling an uneasy knot tightening in my stomach. It was then that I noticed the key still in the ignition. I could have sworn the engine was off when I first stopped, but the key was in place. Why hadn't anyone taken it? At that point, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, the silence, the emptiness. It was too much, but I had to know what was going on. So, I decided to open the trunk. Now, this is where things got strange. The trunk wouldn't budge at first. I had to give it a good yank, and when it opened, I found 3 large, bulging garbage bags tied up with thick rope. I don't know why, but the sight of those bags made my blood run cold. They didn't belong there, not in that car, not in the middle of the desert. What could they be? I didn't want to get any closer. But before I could pull away, a sharp, deafening gunshot shattered the silence. It came from behind me. I hit the ground instinctively, my heart racing. My mind was spinning. Without even thinking, I tossed the car keys inside and sprinted back to my truck. My boots slapped against the hot pavement as I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't want to. Just as I slammed the door shut and threw the truck in gear, I heard it. A shout from the darkness. "Hey!" The voice was low and gruff, echoing across the empty desert. I didn't stick around to find out who it was. I hit the gas and floored it, the engine roaring to life. My foot never left the pedal. The truck barreled down the road, the headlights slicing through the dark. But that wasn't the end. Oh, no. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw headlights chasing me. Fast. A car was tailing me, honking its horn like a maniac, trying to get closer. My stomach dropped. The last thing I needed was to get caught up in whatever was happening back there. I called the police, my voice shaky as I tried to explain what was going on. The car kept getting closer, faster, like it was never going to stop. And then, just as I was about to give up hope, I saw them, flashing red and blue lights ahead of me, coming from a police car. My heart skipped a beat. The car behind me swerved suddenly, veering off the road and disappearing into the dark. I pulled over, barely able to catch my breath. I thought I was safe. But when I told the officer what happened, he just nodded, took my report, and said, "Don't worry, we'll send backup." And that was it. No follow-up. No investigation. I never heard from the cops again. My friends thought I was crazy, but I know what I saw. To this day, whenever I drive through the desert at night, I can't shake the feeling that something is still out there, something I never want to encounter again. Let's move on to another story. My name is Jake, and I've been trucking for more than 15 years. Most days are routine, but every once in a while, you get something that shakes you to your core. This next story still haunts me. It was a cold October night. I was driving through South Dakota, headed toward Wyoming. The trip was supposed to be easy, but sometimes you can't predict what happens when the night gets too quiet. By midnight, I was struggling to keep my eyes open. It's hard, staying awake when you're out there alone in the middle of nowhere. You get tired, your body fights sleep. That's when I remembered what my buddy Tom had told me, smelling salts. They were supposed to keep you awake, give you a little kick of adrenaline. I grabbed them out of my bag and took a quick hit. That rush of energy kept me going, but I knew I couldn't last much longer. I needed to pull over, but the road was empty. There were no rest stops, no gas stations, just dark trees and endless stretches of highway. That's when I saw it, a light in the distance, flickering. At first, I thought it was another car, but as I got closer, I realized it was something else. I pulled off the highway and onto a dirt road. The light came from a neon open sign glowing faintly in the distance. An abandoned gas station of all places. The flickering sign felt out of place in the middle of nowhere. I parked my truck, stepped out into the cold air, and made my way toward the building. It was eerie, dead still, no sounds at all. It felt like I was the only living person for miles. The door creaked as I opened it. The dim light inside revealed shelves stripped bare, nothing but dust and cobwebs. The place hadn't been stocked in years. But then, I heard it. A thud from the back room. It was faint, but it was there. I froze. I shouldn't have gone toward the sound, but I did. The closer I got, the more my instinct screamed at me to turn back. But I didn't listen. I crept toward the back room, the smell of stale air growing stronger. As I peeked inside, I saw a refrigerator. It was plugged in, humming quietly, but there was nothing inside, nothing but an empty, dark interior. I was about to leave when I heard another sound, whispers, soft, unintelligible whispers. They came from the main room, from the shadows. At that moment, my blood ran cold. I bolted out of there like my life depended on it. I jumped back into my truck and drove off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I glanced in the rearview mirror, and that's when I saw it. Movement. My heart dropped into my stomach. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I needed to get to safety. Fast. I drove as fast as I could until I reached the nearest police station, my mind racing. As I explained everything, officers swarmed my truck, opening the back. That's when the surprise hit me. Out stepped 3 people. 2 men and a woman. They were ragged, dirty, like they had been living off the land for who knows how long. One of the men pulled out a gun, but they just stared at me. Cold, unblinking eyes. I never found out what they were planning. But I know one thing for sure. They weren't there by accident. Thanks for riding along with us through these chilling stories. If you enjoyed them, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more terrifying tales. And remember, out there on the roads, you never know what might be lurking in the shadows. Stay safe, folks.